You know that we did start recording, and so like I said, what you can expect to see later today, I'll post the recording in our Panopto folder so that way you can refer back to that and go ahead and start the check-in here in just a moment. Okay, I think that is everyone so far. Let me see something here. I want to check attendance. It's a little bit hard with presentation mode for me to see everyone, but I can at least kind of look. See. All right, so that's everyone. I'll go ahead and start that for us. Okay. There we go.
Can you hear me, Professor?
I think I heard, I'm not sure if I heard someone speaking just
Yeah,
now. I apologize.
it's me, Angel, Angel.
Oh, hell yeah.
Um, so I kind of want, due to the fact that we're in online learning and stuff like that, I kind of wanted to inform you that I live down the street from the Bridgestone building. So, isn't that one of the like protest spots?
Now, I would just have to be sure. I know, just based on the communication, that as far as we know, the like I don't know, hotspots, I guess you could call them, would be that Polsky Building, College of Business area. But I could see how, just depending on how the situation develops, that it could become a hotspot. What I would, you know, as you're thinking about your access and those types of things, you might consider in this situation perhaps going to a public library that is not near these activities and those types of things. You might consider that. There are also several places that have free Wi-Fi that you could always kind of make sure that you're set up near those areas, and that way you can kind of be aware of your surroundings and have a little bit more, security where you are, that type of thing. Excuse me. Um, but I would say, if you're concerned at all about your access or safety and those types of things, then to let me know that, and then we can make sure that we address that however we need to. So if that's an individual thing, you can always let me know that. We can take it from there. Um, what I would encourage everyone to do is to continue checking. I'm just going to show everyone where that update page is, just because these are kind of ongoing. This is a very what we call fluid situation. So what I wanted to do quickly then is just talk about, this kind of leads me into how things are going to look from at least now until we get notice that we are back in person. Um, so what I wanted to mention for those who joined us a little bit late um, was that there is a question about when this will end, and it's hard to say how long at least this conflict will last. And that's the unfortunate thing, is that um, it's hard to predict how some of the outcomes of these, like especially now that we're thinking about um, again, the levels of unrest and just overall, I was watching a little bit of the statements that the Walker family and the different legal teams were giving on Tuesday. So, or sorry, Monday. Um, so it just sounds like there's still that ongoing, drive to protest. So it's hard to tell when exactly this will end. So what I just would encourage you to do, I'm just going to take us to the announcements that I posted yesterday. And then I'm going to go back here just to show you with Teams how things are set up. But what I wanted to show you, okay, um, there's this page for news information and updates about campus operations. I know the link says here like classes in Polsky, but if you click on that, excuse me, you can then see the campus operations update, and then at the very top, um, classes held in person will remain remote for Wednesday. Campus is open, however, employees are able to work from home, those types of things. Essentially, that is what we know at this point. So once we get further notice about how things are going, we'll just kind of take this day by day. That's how we'll deal with it. But essentially now, I would just encourage you to continue checking that page to see updates. There was discussion on the digest about essentially with the digest announcement that administration was trying to send to students. There was a server issue and they weren't able to get that message out. So that's why we kind of refer students to this page. So you also want to continue checking digest. They might, I think, have resolved that issue by now. We had an email very late last night about the problem. So I'm hoping that later today, that will be in the digest announcement that goes out to everyone. But at least for now, we can kind of continue to check this area. Okay. So while I'm here, what I wanted to show you briefly is I've made some updates to our course homepage just to kind of accommodate what's going on at this point. So I actually had our Microsoft Teams set up at the very beginning of the semester, just in case we needed to make this change. So I'll show you a little bit about what that looks like. What I wanted to just emphasize now were a few things. One of those is that toward the bottom, basically underneath my contact information card, we have the direct link to class meetings. So we have that. So as you're kind of logging on to Brightspace and trying to locate the information you need to join the class meetings, you can, again, there's the widget there. Most of the time, again, with quick reminders about class, I include the course meeting room link, alternative ways to join the meeting if you're not able to log into the desktop app or however you're joining, like web browser. I think you can still join with your web browser. So you don't necessarily need to have the desktop app. You know, it's call in as well if you feel that that is a better way to join depending on your situation. Okay. And then I also have two student hour spaces. So underneath the class meeting link, we have that direct link to student hours. So I have, as you saw in the syllabus, I have hours on Monday and Wednesday, and then I have a different set of hours on Fridays. So the Monday and Wednesday hours meeting link is at the top, like Monday and Wednesday, and then the Friday hours link is at the bottom, so it's like Friday hours. Okay, and then if you just want to access our general channel or course questions channel, that is right there. I'll take a little bit of time, I think, on Friday just to show you what all is there since you'll be collaborating using Microsoft Teams in this situation. So we'll talk more about what that will look like. For today, we're just going to focus on getting to chapter 21 and talking in general about how our presentations could still occur in this online environment. Okay. What I wanted to mention, certainly you can ask questions today during class. But I want to say going forward, what I would encourage you to do is if you have a general question, like again, related to online instruction, how will that look? General questions about assignments, like for example, with the presentation, what's required for that, those types of questions. You can always post them in our general questions topic. That will be a good place for everyone to see answers to common questions, especially since they usually apply to everyone. And then if you have personal questions like about your grades, about feedback for an assignment, for example, then you want to contact me directly. You can always, again, there's a way to message me directly on Microsoft Teams. That's been set up since the beginning of the semester. You'll be able to chat, call right here. And then you can always send me an email as well. Okay. All right. So I think for now, that's enough. You can do enough with Teams now, I think, where you know where the class meeting room is, you know where student hours are, you know where to find updates on our situation and those types of things. So are there general questions now about just locating those things? Just going to quickly check the chat. Let's see. Okay. All right. So I'm going to take that as a good sign that everything is clear. Like I said earlier, I have the recording going for us today, so you can, as needed, refer back to this if you're trying to just locate what you need in terms of online stuff today. Okay. So now what I'm going to do is transition us into what's happening as far as what we did last time, what we're going to review today, and then a preview of what we will do on Friday. Okay. And that'll kind of include discussion of how things will look from here when it comes to online instruction, that transition. Okay. So hopefully you can still see the presentation there. It might take a second. I apologize. There we go. Okay. So a few quick things I wanted to mention. What I decided to do is set up the Kahoot challenge for chapter 21, just the section introduction in sections 1 through 3. Today we are going to finish our discussion of sections 4 and 5, so our review of sections 4 and 5. And then I will set up another challenge and it will close at the same time. So it's going to close on April 21st, all of those. What I also wanted to mention is for your project report and presentation, what you'll want to do if you want to submit an instructor review request or you have things that you need feedback on in general, you want to submit that tonight. Okay, that's the very last day. And that is because it's an in-depth project. Certainly you can think about whether you want to, where you're at in terms of the project, maybe you just send me what you're working on. It doesn't have to be complete. You can even just send me your presentation slides or your report. You can send me both. It's up to you as far as what you need at this point, since it is 1 week before the project is due. And again, I'm doing that so that way you have time to implement the feedback. And since you have another person working with you, the more time that you have to work together, the better. So that's why I'm, at least for this assignment, saying you want to have that in by tonight. Okay. So next time we're going to still meet on Microsoft Teams. If there are any changes to that, we'll make sure to, as I get the information, that I will communicate that to you as immediately as possible, as timely as I could be in the situation, just depending on when I get notice and those types of things. But for now, we'll assume that we're going to meet on Teams on Friday. And so we'll just kind of keep an eye out. I'm going to continue checking for updates, as should you. As far as that goes. What you want to do to prepare for Friday in general is you want to take a look at the supplemental materials for presentations. I'm going to show you today some different examples of the data analysis project presentation slides, so you can kind of see what types of things you want to emulate, things you want to avoid, right? And so on Friday, you'll want to have reviewed that information so you go into it with a plan. Okay. So what we'll do as far as working on Microsoft Teams, um, for some of you, you might be familiar with Teams, others of you may not be. So if you are, apologize, I'm just going to explain this for students who are not. So there are ways on Microsoft Teams to actually have breakout rooms. So what I'll do is we'll have just a general whole class meeting to discuss what you want to use the time to do. Then I'll break you out into your groups, your partner team group for the data analysis project. And so you'll be able to talk immediately with those people in that one room. And I'll kind of move around, checking in with each of you periodically throughout the meeting. But later today, what I'll do is post a preview of what that session will look like. But at least you know a little bit about how it'll be configured, how Teams will be configured to support the conversations you need to have with your partner or partners. Okay. Questions so far about this information here? Let me take a quick look at the chat here. Okay, I see someone's typing. I'm going to give you a second. Okay. All right. Okay, very good. Thank you. Okay. Okay, so I'm going to take that as a good sign. All right. So like I said before, what we're going to do is we're going to finish talking about chapter 21 today. Last time we were able to look at the introduction, excuse me, sections 1, 2, and 3. We got to several parts of section 4, and we really didn't get to section 5 yet. So we're going to finish those things. Okay. And then as time permits, we will take a look at what you need to do before the project deadline, those types of things. Okay. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to set up Kahoot for us. We are going to do teams where you're answering on your individual devices. So kind of what we did for, I was trying to think, we did that a couple of times with Kahoot when we were looking at Unit 4, and then also with, I believe, yes, some of the parts in Unit 4. I'm not sure now. I'm like, no, we didn't do that for Unit 5. So let me go ahead and get that started for us. I'm going to end the PowerPoint here. We'll come back. We're done. And then we'll talk more about how that presentation session will look. Okay, so what we're going to do, I've set up a review or continuation Kahoot. This is going to hit on questions that were most frequently missed as we played the live game last time, and it's also going to include questions that are new. Okay, so I'm going to head and start that for us. Okay. Okay, we'll just give this a moment to load. It looks like my internet's running a little slowly today. Okay, very good. All right, so we will do teams, and then like we've done a few times before, we'll do personal devices, and we'll have, since there are, I want to see now if the attendance has changed. I think there's only just 8 of you still, but I want to see. Hold on, apologize. Okay, apologize. Let me just see. Okay. We'll go ahead and do that. We'll start this now. Okay. So here we have, all right. So I'm going to give you all a second to log in. Again, if you're having trouble, please let me know that in the chat. You can also raise your hand in Microsoft Teams, or you can certainly turn your mic on and let me know as we get situated here. Meantime, what I do want to check is our chat log attendant. Let me see. Got 6 students, 7. I think there were 8 of us before, but let me just make sure that I haven't missed anyone. Okay. Oh, good question. Which sections are we focusing on today? We are going to look at sections 4 and 5. We're going to focus on questions that we missed. Well, I was going to say a good portion of people missed or answered incorrectly last time. And then we're also going to look at new questions. Good question. Okay. All right. I apologize now. I just wanted to see, hang on, that we have. Okay, very good. We do have 8. Everybody is there. So like I said, we're going to do this so you are answering on your own device, but moving forward together as a team on the leaderboard. So it's just a matter of who comes in first, second, and third. So we'll go ahead and get started with that. So this first question is familiar to you from last time. We'll get there. Okay, so when preparing your presentation, what should you do first? It's the very first question from the earlier game. Again, should be familiar to you. Give it 10 seconds. Okay, let's see how you did. Yes, so you may remember that you want to think about your audience first, always. So when you do that, you're researching and connecting the topic to your audience. So that is the very first thing that you do, right? And so that does involve some research. You want to research the topic, but you also want to think about your audience first, connect that to what they are supposed to gain from it, right? Okay, so we'll go to the next one. All right. And I apologize, my cat is on the table again. I just have to excuse her. Okay. So next question is a familiar one for you. We'll just go on to the next one. Okay. The question 2. What should you do after creating an online outline or storyboard? Excuse me. And again, this should be familiar to you. This is going to be what do you do after creating an outline or storyboard? You have 3 options. You have 10 seconds. 5 seconds. Yes, so it is determine a delivery style. As you think about your delivery style, how you're going to communicate your findings to your audience, you do want to think about how it is you're going to communicate the information. So after you do your outline or storyboard, you want to think about what parts do I need to orally explain? Which parts do I need to perhaps include a visual for? How is that going to inform my use of technology? So I'm going to think about what type of delivery I need to use, what style of speaking that I need to use, and then what is going to best support that. Okay, so we'll go to the next one. Which term is defined as off the cuff? This is very familiar to you. I hope, from last time. Okay, 30 seconds. Yes, it is impromptu. So again, we think about impromptu, it's sort of like on the fly. That's the very same definition that is included in the text. So off the cuff meaning, again, you have some idea of what you want to say. It's sort of an informal conversational setting. And so you can you kind of even think about the musical term as riff, right? To kind of expand without necessarily having a clear idea of how the end goal is going to look, right? You're just kind of going off um, the cuff, right? So off the cuff, on the fly. All right. The question four: which of these is typically the preferred method for oral presentations in the workplace? You have 20 seconds now. Very good. So again, this is probably something you want to think about for your data analysis project presentation. Okay, so go on to the next one. Now, this is familiar to you. You're thinking about these three blanks. You should seek a one of text, speech, and visuals, that two, the presentation, rather than three from it. So you're thinking about, really, it comes down to which word in number one fits the best. 35 seconds. 25 seconds. Seconds. So you should seek a balance. And so we're talking about balance in terms of content on your slides, for example. And in this case, balance, we want to have, so see like connection. If we think about what's stated exactly in the text, it doesn't quite work there. You do want to have some, again, logical links between your text and speech and visuals, but we're really talking about in terms of the content, how much you have on the slides. You want it to be fairly weighted equally, or at least to the point where you have enough chunked information that your audience can follow what you're saying. There's not too much information. Okay, here's question 6. How will the rehearsal process not inform your delivery? This is familiar to you from last time. You have 60 seconds. 45 seconds. 35 seconds. It will, yes. Okay. So when you think about rehearsing, right, you're thinking about delivering a speech, and maybe you've taken a speech class, maybe you haven't. And so in those situations, you really want to practice what you're saying. So when you practice that, you are thinking about how long do I need to spend adjusting, or excuse me, diving into a particular part of my research report, for example, right? So we want to think about timing because there is a strict time limit. So that is something you need to think about. Rehearsal process can do that because you will be able to hear um, yourself speaking and know how much time you are taking with doing that. And so in that case, you do get an idea of how you look and sound when you are speaking. Um, and so with that, you know, it's feedback from other people. It's perhaps yourself kind of recognizing and hearing how you look and sound. They even suggest in the textbook that you can record yourself. And since we may or may not be on Microsoft Teams for this particular presentation, you can actually, again, create a meeting and record yourself speaking with your teammates so that way you kind of know how you all look and sound. Um, so, as we said last time, with audience interaction, there's only so much that you can anticipate how people will respond to what you're saying. So, you can certainly have, as you are practicing, you can look to others to kind of get some idea of how people might respond, but you're not always going to know how each group is going to, or each individual is going to react or have questions, something they have questions about. Okay, so we'll go on. Okay, question 7. What should you be careful to do with animations and transitions? This is new. So we're thinking about, do they distract, frustrate, or confuse? You have 5 seconds. So we're thinking about distractions, right? So you might think about in the early days of PowerPoint or even perhaps a presentation that you've seen in which someone has transitions for every part of the text or every in between every single slide. And especially if it's not consistent in like the style, for example, you might think of the spinning text effect with animation and things like that. If you got that going on too much, it will kind of take away from what the audience sees, what you're saying, right? So that in that sense, it's distracting. True or false? You should start your presentation by choosing a template. You have 10 seconds, either true or false. Okay. So one thing we talked about last time that everyone did pretty well with that question. Um, you need to work on your outline or your storyboard before you start choosing a template. Just because again, the template is sort of like the design, uses of color, things we talked about with chapter 8, right? And so if you do that and then have to change the contents because you really didn't think about what was going in your outline versus what is over here in the presentation, you're actually creating extra work for yourself. And again, we really are focusing on what it is we're trying to say, our thoughts, how we communicate them. And then we think about the surface level piece. Like, again, once we know what we're saying, what our audience needs to know, how we can emphasize that with design, right? And just overall, what we're saying, how we're structuring information, those types of things, right? So that has to come first before you choose a template. Okay. Question 9. If your topic involves spatial concepts or visuals that are interactive, there is a specific software that is mentioned in the textbook. One of these is mentioned, the rest are not. I have 20 seconds. 15 seconds. Yes. So the desire to learn is actually the company that makes Brightspace. So Desire to Learn Brightspace is what we call our learning management system, or our learning management system LMS or course page. So I saw most people got this question right. But I did want to share with you, just so you're aware, certainly thinking about what your topic involves and do you think of interactive visual help? So I wanted to quickly show you what that looks like now. Um, you can, I believe they're set up for Prezi video. I believe it will allow that, but you can always just have the presentation. And so you can see here in this case that they have like an infographic and then they zoom in on different results. So just depending on what it is you're talking about, like your actual problem or solution or something like that, um, or trends you found in your data, you can communicate that visually with that extra element of interactivity where you kind of zoom in on different things, to emphasize points. What I will mention is for people who do this, that if you choose to, you want to make sure to avoid excessive zooming in and zooming out, just because that can, for people who might have sensitivities to motion, especially like motion sickness, you can, sometimes that can impact people. It can distract their presentation and then just overall, they won't be able to focus. So just some things to think about. Okay, just wanted to mention that. We're going to continue on now. Okay, there's question 10. What is the effect of excessive material crammed onto one slide? So it's either frustrating or confusing. And there's something specific mentioned in the text. This is the specific effect. 10 seconds. Okay. So imagine for a moment, and you've probably seen this to some extent with presentations that I was trying to think, some lecture slides that professors have, for example. If you do have a situation in which there's just a lot of information and the presenter or speaker moves too quickly through that or just spends a lot of time running through each part of that particular slide, it can be frustrating in the sense that, again, if the timing is off, you're not able to fully process what's happened, what is stated on the slides, and those types of things that can get frustrating. There are other times in which specific design flaws can confuse the audience, but we're really talking about just allowing people the mental space to process what is being said and then how is that reflected in the slides. Okay, question 11. You should aim for 3 to 6 lines per slide with no more than 6 to 9 words per bulleted item. This is a guideline for most professional presentations. In 5 seconds. Okay, so it says here in the text, the difference is what we do want to have no more than 6 to 9 words per bulleted item. So each part, you can write more than 3 to 6 lines. You can have 7 to 9. So if you have 3 lines per slide, that's probably again a lot of white space. So there's more that you can add there. 7 to 9 is a good balance of text with some white space, as we talked about with design. Okay, so move on. Question 12. What is the effect of an over-reliance on bulleted items? Ten seconds. Okay. So the text mentions it can distract the audience in that Um, when you have something that is a little bit more complex of a topic, it can, if you kind of just bullet it, it can kind of oversimplify the complexities of that subject. And so it can kind of distract from, that's what they talk about, it distracts from the deeper message, right? So rather than kind of showing the complex parts as part of a whole, for example, you see that there's this breakdown and you're not really sure how each of those smaller topics connects to the larger one, right? Okay, just a few more, and then we'll start our exit ticket here. So you want to let the audience digest the slide data while you speak, not before or after. According to the text, is that true or false? 15 seconds. You have 10 seconds. 5 seconds. Very good. Yes. So you want to be conscious of that as you're delivering your presentation. We'll go on to the next one. Don't distribute handouts until you're ready to discuss the contents. Is that true or false? You have 10 seconds. So it is true. Of course, you want to think about as the audience, continues to move through your presentation, you want to think about strategically what it is you want them to look at the handout. So if you hand it out too soon, before you're ready to discuss it, your audience is going to focus on that. And then you sort of have to pull their attention back to focus on what you are saying, right? So that's part of it. Okay. And then again, you want to be at a point where you want to make sure to, if you start to talk about what you need to talk about and you haven't passed it out, then you do that, right? Okay, we'll go on, see how we did. Okay, so a little bit later today, I'll set up a challenge. Again, everyone who is here either won, you either placed first, second, and third. So if you want to improve your rank or score, you can always take the challenge. And so the challenge is going to have all of the content from sections 4 to 5, not just what we talked about today. Okay, so with the time we have, we're actually 5 minutes till. So what I'm going to do, I want to quickly talk about the guidelines for the oral presentation, and then we'll conclude, okay? So what I wanted to make sure to do first was, I'm going to go back here for a second. Okay. All right. So one of the things we talked about just now was the balance of speech to text, or excuse me, text and visuals. And then we also talked about consistency and design. So what I wanted to quickly point out were some different examples. So we have a weak example. I'm going to talk you through that, explain why. It is weak. Okay. So what you can see here in terms of design, I'm going to kind of show you what I noticed. Now, with design, you might think about what we talked about in chapter 8, as far as, having text that is easy to see, uses of font sizes and those types of things. But as we go down, you're going to see the elements of consistency that are kind of lacking here when we look at the font styles, the slide design, and these types of things. So as you can see, there are a number of issues with visibility, especially thinking about this purpose slide. That probably could have been I was going to say, it's kind of clear. So you'd want it to be a little less clear so that you can see the text and the images are not making it difficult for you to read it. And so we can see again the lack of consistency with the slide design, fonts, those types of things, right? So we can see there again with this that there's just a general lack of consideration to consistency and cohesiveness. And then in general, we see that there's just a lot of text, right? We don't need to have so much here. We can have a greater balance of what it is that we're talking about here with the text. And then we have the visual there and those types of things, right? And again, we just see the lack of consistency. All right. And then, okay, when I wanted to quickly show you were those strong examples. And so next time we're going to talk about how you can rehearse. We have 3 different days that you'll be able to work with your team to rehearse your presentation. And so with that, we'll talk more about the criteria, the expectations, and those types of things. Now, what you're going to see with these slides is that it is set up in the same way as you would have your report. There's a purpose slide, problem, procedures, methodology, your data and results section. So what I wanted to emphasize here, again, it's a little bit inefficient. There is a lot of text here. You really can focus on the most essential details. You don't have to have like full sentences in your slides, right? You might have the questions, for example, right? If you're talking about procedures and methodology, you might include your questions. You can see the options that they chose as far as having layout of text, different columns, and then visuals. So I would say in terms of this, if we're looking at the criteria, this would probably earn a check in terms of how it's designed. It's consistent. It's like I said, there are a few inefficiencies, but for the most part, it is kind of adhering to those guidelines that we've talked about so far. Same is true for the second example. And we'll get there. You're going to, again, see a consistency in color design with the slides, balance of, oh, sorry. What I did is I also included the project report and presentation rubrics for each student so you could kind of see overall how that design element was addressed in the feedback and those types of things. So let me get to the second example. I apologize. Okay, so second example, what I wanted to talk about. Again, consistency in design. We do see some inefficiencies when it comes to like, we could see here there's a huge gap between like the heading or the title of the slide, and then we've got this major white space or empty space between the heading and those types of things. But we can see here, this actually does fairly well in attending to what we just talked about, having 6 to 9 lines, right? We have those. We have 7 to 9 words, right? So I think that in terms of this, we can see that there's more attention to just kind of making it simple, kind of, again, just highlighting the essential details, not having complete sentences is totally fine because you are delivering that orally. You're going to speak through that rather than have that content on the slides and then just kind of reading it. So we don't want to have just like a scripted delivery. We want this to be extemporaneous. And we see that with the slide design here. Okay, so it is 10:30. So I'm going to stop us here with the recording. What I wanted to mention is if you do have specific questions, concerns, I'll be available on the call for a few minutes as I get this recording stopped and those types of things. So if you do have questions, please stick around. Otherwise, I will see you here on Friday. We're going to use the same link to join in the event that we are online. We're still sort of in this online format. Okay, so let me go ahead and bring this back. Okay, all right. Stop sharing here. Okay. So like I said, as you have questions, please feel free to stick around. Otherwise, I will see you on Friday. So I'll let you know again as soon as I know of any updates that you will hear that as well. Okay. All right. Thank you.
So I do have a question before I go.
Sure.
So in
In one
regards
second, let me
like
stop it.